Hey guys, welcome to the shop. Now this week we're going to be working on several things really, but the major thing is going to be this big motor. We need to tear it down, check and make sure that it's not damaged in any way. Check the bearings on it, clean it up. I mean, it's a big job, trust me. It's a big job. So we need to get started if we're going to get done with it, because I still got flooring to do. So I'm going to bring you in. We're going to pull the bolts out of this thing and hopefully it comes apart. And I'm in my coveralls because it's freezing out here. It's like 80 last week, and that's 40. Alright, so I've already got all the bolts loose in this. And I've cleaned around the shaft here, so hopefully this front end will pull off. I'm having to work on it on the floor because I can't really get it up on a bench. It's just too heavy. That was surprisingly easy. Wow. Let me get you a little better shot at this stuff. Pretty dirty. Alright, not only is it cold, but it's raining. I think 50 degrees Fahrenheit is cold. Some of you guys who live way up north or in colder areas are probably like, man, that's hot. But man, I get cold easy. Skinny guys freeze to death. Just the way it is. But you can see this is full of grease, man. It's bad, really. And I'm using just a stick here. I don't want to use anything metal to poke around on these windings. Now you can see this is it's hard to tell the difference, but this is a fabric in this elbow, and then it comes down to the individual windings. And each one of these wires is insulated from all the rest. They have a thin, really thin coating on them. And if you scratch that coating off on more than one and they short out, you can ruin a motor. I've done it. Getting in a hurry and not realizing how delicate these things really are. Getting the rotor in and out is one of the more dangerous parts, because you risk bumping it around and hitting these windings and cause an issue. And if this motor was to need rewound, it's junk. I mean, it's just not worth fixing. To be honest, it's probably not worth fixing now. I can get a newer version that's probably more efficient for pretty cheap, really used. But I'm going to try to fix this because I just like it. I like the design. It'll be more than enough for what I do, and I just like it. So I don't know that I'm going to try to fix this broken foot or not. We'll see. But first, let's try to get this rotor out of here because it's kind of in the way, and I don't want to break all this stuff up and just cake this thing in here any harder than it is. So let me get you back, and we'll see if we can't hopefully lift this thing out of here. Hopefully this slides out of the other end bell of this motor as easy as that one come off. It's moving. Oh. Real careful. There we go. That wasn't too bad. Not near as bad as I thought. Let me get you a good look at this stuff, and I'll show you why it was locked up. Alright, so it's a really tight fit between the outside of this rotor and the inside, the ID of this stator. And all this grease and stuff over time had gotten in between the two, grease, chips, and whatnot, and basically locked it up. So think about this next time you get an old machine that is, and if you look inside and it's dirty, this is probably what you're running that motor, you know, in the conditions that you're running that motor. It's not a bad idea to pull them apart and clean them, and it's really not that hard as long as you're careful. And all I'm going to do is chip all this stuff off. It should, you know, with something that won't damage, like I said, the windings. I'm going to be real careful, and you know, just pick away at this guy and get all the goop off of it, at least the major portions of it, and then we'll, you know, see what we need to do from there. Not only does this grease hold chips and stuff, but it also, it's like wrapping insulation around these wires. It doesn't let them breathe and release the heat. And if you was to operate this motor under a heavy load, you know, this could be the straw that broke the camel's back, so to say, as far as burning it up. So we'll get all this goop off here, and this will let this motor, you know, breathe again. Shouldn't be as bad on the other side, but this is pretty bad, to be honest. I'm not seeing a lot of abrasion in here as far as chips getting in between the rotor and stator. I can see some, but it's not bad. I think it'll be just fine once we get it good and cleaned up. All of this will have to be thoroughly cleaned, at least where, you know, your clearance between your rotor and stator. I'm not going to try to get this perfect because I'm not going to be able to with the equipment that I have. I'm just going to clean it up as best I can and have to call it good. Probably never get all the grease off these. Alright, so we get the rotor up on the bench. And man, to try to run this, I mean, it would be a sin to run this thing like this, you know. And you really don't know until you really look into them, because, you know, it's pretty hidden, all this stuff. And you know, this thing's never, I can probably say with confidence that it's never been apart, most likely. And it needed it. Man, this is not in good shape, not at all. It's just dirty, that's all. You know, it's just dirty. I think it'll clean up and probably work just fine. But it would you'd just ruin it if you tried to, it wouldn't last. It couldn't last in this condition. You know, if you just, you know, shot some grease to it and plugged it up, yeah, it may run, but it's not gonna run, you know, near as long as it would if you went over it like I'm doing. So I don't regret doing this. It's definitely a needed thing. Alright, so I've run into my first issue that I've seen with this thing so far, the motor. And it's got 2 cast iron rings up front. I believe they're cast iron. And then it's supposed to have 2 in the back. Well, one of these in the back is broke. And it's been broke for a long time. It's, you know, the brake is completely dirty. And I don't even know where the other piece is. It may be down in the motor, I'm not for sure. But I'll have to, or down in the housing, I'll have to check. But I believe they're cast iron. That's what it feels like. So I'll have to come up with a piece, you know, of cast iron, which I don't have, I'm sure, big enough to make one of these out of. So problem number 1. It's not that big a deal, but you know, just another thing we got to do. Let me take you inside. I want to show you, you know, where I'm at on the hardwood flooring. I haven't had a lot of chance to work on it. I probably should be doing that instead of this, but I'm going to work on it today. So let me take you in, show you where I'm at and how it's going along. Well, I'm getting it done. Not near as far along as I would have liked to have been by now, but I've only really worked on it a few days. And I'm having to hand cut every piece and fit it. And these are really long pieces. I mean, I think they're 15 or 20 feet, these pieces. And I'm cutting them up into, you know, anywhere from 24 to 48 inch pieces. And, you know, putting them down, hand fitting them, so it's going kind of slow, but it's looking good. I'm about a third of the way done, so still a long way to go, but I'm really happy with the way it's turned. What? But I'm really happy with the way it's turned out so far. I think it's really pretty. Go outside. Let's go outside. It's a huge job to clean up something like this. I mean, just this motor itself will take hours to get cleaned up, full of junk. I've seen them bad, but this is probably as bad as I've ever personally dealt with. But it'll clean up. Everything's looking actually pretty good, just really dirty. Just like you'd expect on an old machine of that age. There's the rotor, and that's about as clean as I'm going to clean it. I think any more than this would just be wasting my time, really. We're not building a show motor. We're going to put this thing on a trailer and take it around to shows. We just want it to work and not damage itself. And the bearings feel really good. I mean, no, they're not notchy at all. The race is really nice and shiny. Both front and back, so I'm not going to replace those either because they don't need it. Probably would be a good idea while it's out, but I'm not going to spend the extra money because it doesn't need it. This is one of the cast iron rings. It's got 2 on each. Of course, I've got one that's broke and I'm going to have to make, but these kind of remind me of a piston ring in a way, and they just and they're very sharp. Very sharp. They just roll on, and man, kind of like a piston. And I guess when you grease this motor, these rings, they fit in the end bell really tight and make a seal. You take a plug out that's on the lower part of the end bell. You pump grease into the bearing until grease comes out of this plug on the bottom. You run the motor and then let it push out the excess grease. This is just what I've been told. And then once it's ran for a few minutes, you put the plug back in. And that way you're not always pushing excess grease back in here, because a lot of times people will over grease these motors. It doesn't really take much, and it doesn't have to be done that often. And you can overdo it and pump grease back into the motor, which is what I think happened to this one, a lot, other than it getting, gunk in it from just normal use. So there we go. Fairly clean enough anyway. And we'll make a new ring, and we'll be able to, I think, install this fairly confident that it doesn't have any issues. Alright guys, I got a new piece of tooling for the lathe, and that is a Cushman steel 15-inch 4-jaw chuck. Now this is a heck of a chuck. But it allows me to take advantage of the full capacity of this lathe. What I think 3 weeks ago, all I had as far as a forejaw for this lathe was a 8-inch south bend forejaw. So I couldn't hold anything that had any real size. So this should expand our capabilities quite a bit. Now, this is the chuck that I had asked a few weeks ago if anyone was heading through Ohio down this way and would be willing to stop at HGR and either pick this thing up and hold it for me till I get a chance to get up there and get it, or be willing to bring it down and get a shop tour. And I had, I'm guessing 15 or 20 people offer to either pick it up and hold it or pick it up and bring it down. And I just want to say thanks to all the guys who even considered it. But ended up, George Long and his wife decided they wanted to do it, so he picked it up, brought it down. Me and George hung out in the shop for a couple hours and talked shop, and George's wife and my wife, talked kids in the house. So it was a great visit. I really appreciate it, and like I said, I appreciate anybody who even considered it. Now, this chuck was found by my buddy Jim Lichty. He is always prowling around looking for deals and stuff, and knows pretty much what I need, and alerted me on this thing and even picked it up for me. So I can't say thanks enough. So nice chuck. It's just really heavy, and I won't be putting it on this lathe unless it's needed, because it is a job. I'm gonna have to come up with some sort of rail or something in the rafters in order to put this thing on and take it off, because you ain't picking it up. At least I ain't picking it up and putting it on there. So pretty nice. So thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you, George, and thank you, Jim. Alright, so this is a Westinghouse motor. It says it's 1450 RPM, 1450 to 1750. I guess that's depending on the voltage. 220 or 440, and of course 20 to 10 amps depending on your voltage. It has all of the wiring information on this tag, so everything you need. Nice that they put everything on metal tags, and I think it's still fairly common, but you're not going to wipe this off with a little bit of carb air cleaner. It's looks like it's fairly well done. It's kind of stamped in. So let me get these bolts out of here, and we'll pull this end bell off and get a look at this end. The glasses are all fogged up, man. I'd so much dread. It's not the cold weather necessarily that I dread. I mean, I don't like it. It's the darkness, man. It's almost already dark, and I just got home. And in the beginning of, or at the middle of winter, man, it gets dark at 4 o'clock, or starts getting dark at 4 anyway. Not good. Alright. Plenty of goo that we broke off. Lots of goo. And lots more goo. So, dirty for sure. Man, this thing is probably questionable whether it's even worth this fixing, to be honest. But we're going to try. I think, I don't know. I think it's worth a shot. Be a lot of work though. I'll spend as much time cleaning this up, if you count my time as money, as I could probably just buying a used motor, if you could find one surplus. Right, check that out. And that's just grease. This grease that's been basically baked onto the windings. So I'll have to do the same thing back here as I did on the front. I think I'm going to take it outside and see if some of this won't blow off, but I don't think that it will. But let's try that before it gets dark. well, taking this outside and blowing it out, really, I mean, it helped a lot, but it's still pretty dirty. And being as fragile as these is, I really don't know what to do. I don't know what the professionals do. They probably, and this is a complete guess on my part, is they probably use steam or some sort of bath or something. Now, the windings in this thing are black, but it has been dipped. You can tell, you can see it dripping off the bottom, and it's hardened. It looks like it's been dipped in some sort of tar or something to help insulate it after it was wound. That's what it looks like. And that's pretty common for most motors to be dipped after they're wound. But all I can do at this point, until I can test the windings in this thing, is assume that it's good. Man, it is a lot of work. Imagine, all the pieces and parts to this thing, with it being, covered in tar like paint and packed with 70-year-old grease. It's a lot of work to get this thing cleaned up. And to be honest, if I had the extra money, I would just go out and buy a new motor. I mean, something that's modern. It'll be lighter. It'll be just as powerful and more efficient. But I'm going to work with what I got, at least for now, and move forward. That's all I know to do. And, I like messing with this anyway. I'm looking in the end bales here, and it looks to me like it has some sort of seal pack in the end, and I'm thinking that they're probably leather, but we'll get into that more in the future. Let's build our broken piece, something that we know we can do, and that is make our ring. We've got a broken one here that goes on the back of this rotor, and we're going to be making it. I said cast iron earlier, but I use cast iron and ductile iron terms loosely. It'll be ductile iron. At least that's what I believe I have. So let's go over to the lathe and try to make one. figure out exactly what size we need to make this thing. Okay, so our stock is pretty much ready to turn into this ring, at least to something really close to it. And never made rings before, and I got to looking at this, and what they've done is they turned this was a solid piece, unsplit. They have turned it to a certain dimension. They split it, and then they sprung it to make it compress out against the ring in here, and I'll show you in just a second. And I've come up with a plan to make one. You can't measure off of this because it's been sprung, and it's different depending on where you measure it. So let me bring you in a little closer. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. Never made these before, and then we'll get started. Alright, so you're looking down on the end bell here, and you can see there's a little taper here that gets these rings that are on the rotor started. And what I'm going to do is slide this ring down in here. I want to get a measurement on my ring end gap. This is similar to what they do when they're setting up pistons in an automobile engine. You have to have a certain ring gap that deals with expansion, so they don't smash up against each other when they grow a little bit and cause real bad engine damage. I'm not an engine builder, but I know that they do stuff like that. And this is not critical. I'm really going overboard here trying to get this perfect, but I'm doing that just for my benefit, so I can make something that actually may work in the future instead of just slopping something together. So I've measured my ring gap with a set of loose feeler gauges, and that ring gap happens to be 37 thousandths. So what I'm going to do is cut my piece, my OD of my piece of ductile iron that's in the lathe, to match this ID of the bore here. Then I'm going to come in with a slitting saw on I'll part my ring off once I've made it. I'll have to cut my OD or ID to match. I'll put it on a angle plate, and then I'll come in with a slitting saw and slit it, and then I will have to hand file because I do not have a slitting saw that's 37 thousandths wide. I'll hand file the ring until it's a gap of 37 thousandths. Then I'll spring it, just probably by hand in order to give it the springiness. That way it will expand against the ID here. So that's the plan. I don't know how far we'll get on this, guys. I've been sick all week. Not horribly sick, but sick enough to where I feel really bad. So I'm a little slow this week. So let's go see how far we can get on this ring and get one step closer to getting this thing done. Alright, so to measure this bore, I'm just using a telescoping bore gauges. Just gotta make sure you're in the center. And rock it out, and then my 3 to 4 stare at mics. It looks like we're about 3.263. So I'll just take a couple measurements and make sure I'm correct, and then we'll go cut it. This was just a piece of scrap that I had laying around that was about, that had the right dimensions to make this out of. So I've got a lot of stock to remove here. I'll show you a couple cuts, then we'll come back, we'll work our ID, and then we'll part it off. So I'm about 60 thousandths out from my. And that cast iron, you gotta wear, wearing earplugs too. This stuff will shoot in your ears, in your eyes, around your safety glasses. It like sprays off like a, I don't know. You can't hide from it. No matter where you stand, the cast iron gets you. So I'm gonna turn this around. I'm not crazy about the finish I'm getting, and this edge has got quite a few miles on it, so it won't hurt to change it out. And hopefully we'll get a better finish, because I'm not crazy, like I said, about what I'm getting. Could be this insert though. So on my inserts, there's, like a lot of people have said, there's no reason to crank these things down. I mean, really, you can get enough leverage with just the small portion of the Allen wrench. So let's cut this final 60, about what I'm out, and then we'll do our ID and part it off. Should be it. We're looking for 3.262. And a few tenths, probably 2-3 tenths. I think that's probably good enough. Now let's work our ID, and then we will part this thing off. Alright, so I'm looking for an ID of 2.984, and we're going to be running a big Kennametal bar. This is a inch bar, but I've got way too much stick out here, so I'm going to shorten this guy up a bit, and because there's no reason to run a bar out any farther than what you need for the job that you're doing at hand, because you just get a worse finish and more chance for harmonics. So I'm going to shorten this guy up, even though it probably worked the way it is, and then we'll cut this thing. I think it's pretty common practice. Run a biggest bar. I run as big as bar as I can with as little stick out as possible. That just makes sense to me. I don't think I was ever told that. I just do it. So let's get this to size. is 2.9845, so within a half thou. Good enough. Now let's part this thing off. Alright, so I've got a mess. Make sure the top's on your diaphragm before you shake it. I have got the parting blade that that I ground a while back. If I can find my tool to take it off. Show you. This is the piece, or the blade that I ground out of a piece of Lathrobe Crusader XL. I ground it on the cutter grinder a while back, and I'm still using the same edge on it. And we need to get our ring to width. This is one of the rings off of it, and it is 0.1875, so what, 3/16 of an inch. So let's glue this up and lay it out. Now I question, when I go to bend this thing, I'm going to have to be really careful and not over bend it. It being ductile iron, it should take a bend or a set without breaking. But we'll see if we can do it successfully or not. I don't know if we'll get to it today, but we'll try. So I'm going to lay this out and then we'll part it off. Alright, so we're just going to be feeding in by hand. Off this thing. We'll get all the way through it. Hearing that sound change, we got through. There's our ring. Let's go over the bench and look at it. Wow, that is about as tight as it could be and fit. I kind of got lucky on that, I think. Well, there it is. Unsplit, of course. And I really think that's about as far as we're going to get this week. I'm running out of time. That's going to be neat. We're going to have to come up with a way to expand this. Well, we'll split it. Like I said, we'll hold it on an angle. We'll come in with a slitting saw and split this thing, and then we will try to, bend it without breaking it, which may be a task. I've got enough material for a few, so if I break one, it's not a big deal. But maybe some way to control, maybe a wedge or something, and then measure our gap. I don't know, we'll see. We'll come up with something. You could probably just go, and then go, oh, good enough. And it would probably be perfectly fine. We'll see, we may do that. But anyway, I got a lot of neat viewer mail this week. I got some that I'm going to wait and show you next week because I just got really too much. And let me show you some of that, and then we'll sign this thing off. Alright, so a real neat gift here. This is from George Long, the same gentleman who brought me that big chuck. He brought me this down as an extra little gift, and what it is a federal indicator, but it's tagged Kearney and Trekker. Now it's kind kind of hard to see. The crystal's really scuffed up on this thing. It was on, of course, some big Kearney and, you know, used quite a bit, but I definitely think it's worth redoing. I know that Adam has one of these, I believe, and a few of the other guys. Now this is a 1/2 inch travel, and it's a little sticky near the top, so it needs some love. There is a guy out there who redoes these, and I may need to you know, send it to him and have it redone. I think this would be a great addition to that machine. Maybe, you know, fashion a bracket for it, or, you know, just use it in a mag base. But it's tagged Kearney and Trekker. I thought that was really neat, and of course fitting for our big Kearney mill. So thank you, George. I appreciate it, and I think I'm gonna probably have this guy redone. All right, so, you know, I was thinking, instead of splitting that ring with the slitting saw, the one that we're making for the, you know, seal of the end of the motor, why not just set it up in the shaper and grind a tool to the width that I want. If I want a certain slot, that's easy, and I can hold it, instead of on an angle plate, I can hold it in the shaper vise. You know, there's always a million ways to do things. Sometimes you just gotta, you know, think around it. Let me show you some awesome mail that my buddy Jim Lichty sent me. He sent me a care package, man. He's, you know, always, you know, helping me out, and I really appreciate it. Let me show you what he sent. So Jim loaded up a flat rate box with a lot of items either, you know, he had duplicates of or didn't need and thought I could use, and I really appreciate it, man. He sent some great stuff. Sent me 2 wheel hubs for the cutter grinder. You can't have enough of those. Sent me some reamers. These are number 120. They say blanks on them, so I'm not exactly for sure. I don't have any experience with these, but I don't think these are ground to size. I think these were intended to be ground by the user to the size that they need. So I never dealt with those before. Some small carbide Sandvik drills, a 90-degree 3/4 inch stub drill, a boring bar that takes, I think it's 3/4 inch, takes the triangular high-speed steel blanks that I do not have any of, I don't believe. In fact, I think I have one of these bars that doesn't have any high-speed steel in it, so I'm gonna have to, you know, try to find some of them triangular high-speed steel blanks. Some Allen wrenches. These are really nice, the Bondus brand. I really like those. Some D&MGs. These are number 432s. I got a couple holders that take these, and I use them all the time. That's what I used on this project we just done on the ring. Sent me a couple of these. These are ER16 little collet holders that go to Morse taper number 2. And me and Jim had talked about possibly grinding these to Brown and Sharp number 5. That way, in the cutter grinder, this would fit in the cutter grinder, and you could actually hold, you know, anything that's in the size range of an ER16 collet in the spindle. So that's a neat project that we may get into in the future. He sent me, you know, 2, one to potentially mess up and one to possibly get right. Yeah. And also center gauge for the cutter grinder. I did not own one of these, and this is just mine to copy, but you know, a lot better to copy one in hand than off of a drawing off the internet. So, you know, really nice to have one on hand. And he sent me a foot for finger to use on the cutter grinder. Jim likes the cutter grinder, so do I, and I'm excited to get back on the cutter grinder. I want to test out the new one that we got from Dale Dairy. I think that'll be nice, and believe it or not, that is not it. He sent one more big item, and I'm excited about it. I think it'll make good video and a good, you know, learning experience for me. Let me take you over to the cutter grinder and show you what he sent. Alright, so on the table of the cutter grinder, I have a radius grinding attachment. And believe it or not, this was in the same box with all that other stuff. You know, it was like Christmas opening up that box. Now, these are not the most user-friendly pieces for a cutter grinder. They're one of the more, as far as I can tell, one of the more complex items to set up and use successfully. This has the 5C head on it, so it's used for grinding ball nose end mills and stuff like that. Now, you can get different heads for these that you would use to grind like large slitting saws that you would use on the horizontal mill to grind radiuses on the end of the teeth of those big circular saws and stuff. This one, of course, is set up for, like I said, ball end mills and stuff. Got the 5C head. Now, I've never used one of these, of course, and I look forward to learning to use one, but reading the instructions or the setup instructions will make your eyes glaze over. It's pretty intense. At least for me it is. Some of you guys may be able to tackle that real quick, but having no experience on one of these, and just learning to run a cutter grinder a few months ago, it's going to take a little bit. But I'm excited to learn. I think that it's going to be neat, and I've been wanting one of these ever since I got this cutter grinder, because who doesn't want to be able to grind ball nose end mills and stuff? Well, I'm sure there's some of you out there that don't, but I do, and I think it'll be neat. We'll just have to learn to use it. It's missing a few little parts and pieces, but nothing major. A few little knobs and a handle, but we can make all that stuff easy, so it's not a problem. Just needs pulled apart and cleaned. So I'm excited to get it. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. It should make some, good content for you guys, good learning experience for me. So look forward to that in the future. What is it called? All right, guys. Now, last but definitely not least, today is a special day. It's our 16th wedding anniversary. So we did a similar thing last year, just a little, what was it? We did it on our anniversary, the Outback behind the garage. We did a little quick video. So, yeah, special day. So I just want to say, thank you to my wife. She allows me to spend far more time behind the camera than I probably should. I should be focusing more on other things, but she puts up with me, and I really appreciate it, and I could not have got a better lady, so thanks to her. Well, I am officially out of time. Man, it has been a busy week. I had a 38th birthday this week, so that was pretty exciting. They get less exciting every year, though, unfortunately. And I had a 16th wedding anniversary, which they get more exciting the more time goes by. And I've been a little under the weather, so it's been a busy week, and I haven't really had a whole lot of shop time. Between hardwood flooring, which I really, really need to finish, but it goes slow, and all the other things, I had not had as much time out here as I like, but I think I've made good progress. Still, of course, a long way to go. This thing is just now starting to get clean as far as the end bells and the windings. Now, I was told that I should probably bake this thing out. I do have a shop oven, just an old range that come out of the house, to be honest. I was told that I should probably bake it at about 275 for about 4 hours, brown lightly on one side and flip to the other. And they didn't tell me brown it, just bake it just to get the moisture and stuff out of it. Test the windings, but I don't know any good voltmeter that I test or that I trust, and I don't know that I actually trust myself to test this. I'm no electrician, and I don't claim to be. But you can't hurt anything by poking around and trying to own this thing out. But we'll see. I need to research it. That's usually the answer. You can always find all the information that you need. You can always find information that you need online. And I'm sure some of you guys know exactly what to do. So if you have any advice, please leave it in the comments, because I could use it. And I really think that this will probably be a good motor. I don't see why it wouldn't be. I mean, it was probably working, before the mill was stopped being used. So, we'll see. That's all we can do. If it doesn't work, we'll just get another one. It ain't no loss to me, just some time, but I've enjoyed doing it. So, I really appreciate you guys for following along. This has turned into a really big project, but I enjoy it, and I hope you guys get some value out of it too. I appreciate, like always, my subscribers, my patrons, my viewers in general, and I'm glad you guys are following along. So, thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them, and click on my little guy to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. And as always, I'll see you next time.